Awesome. Ken, thank you so much for joining us today on the Inflow Experience podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Austin. And congrats on this is your maiden voyage into the podcast world, right?
It is. It is my first go around, so take it easy on me. Don't beat me up too much. No, I'm just
Hey,
kidding.
the
We'll have
pressure's
fun.
all on you. I'm the one that just has to answer questions. You have to come up with thoughtful ones. So we'll see what
Exactly.
you've come up with today. Hopefully, nothing too personal.
No, nothing too personal. But I actually do want to start with a personal question. Really excited today to talk to you a lot about just the contact center ecosystem, right? Contact center technology and operations, and how businesses are thinking about that today. But before we jump into that, I know I'm curious, and I'm sure there are other people out there. Ken, what was your very first ever job? And thinking about that now, many moons later, what did you learn the most from that? Looking back on
Many moons later. I mean, what are you trying to say there, buddy? I mean,
it.
I don't know how far back you want to go, but I won't bore you with the details of all the jobs I had as a teenager. I mean, family of seven, we learned to work hard early, so I had a lot of those jobs. But probably my first, legit job, I would say, out of high school, it was I went to actually work for the phone company at the time. It was in the Bell system, and it was in large part because they had a tuition reimbursement program, and it was a good way to pay for school. But I was actually a phone operator. Such a thing did exist back then, and then from there, got exposed to a lot of different opportunities. Subsequently, AT&T with divestiture, got exposed to a lot of different opportunities there. And I think part B of the question was, kind of what did I learn or take away early on? I think it's to raise your hand often. You know, um, I've always had a certain hunger of learning new things and being exposed to new things. And some people describe that as getting bored easily, and so needed to change frequently. But did a lot of different jobs, everything from what I would call entry level stuff to operational stuff to analytics. Um, Went and worked back in New Jersey for a while, punched that uh, ticket a little bit, and then came back and got into sales. So yeah, all that kind of in the span of about 5 years early on, and then stayed in sales there pretty much ever since.
Oh wow, that's really cool. That's awesome. I had no idea about that phone operator. I will
Uh,
remember that now. Every time I
yeah,
look at you, that's the new association.
I mean,
That guy's just
don't think of the old cord board stuff. That wasn't it, right? I mean, thank heavens it was a little more advanced than that. But yeah, it was certainly not challenging mentally, but it was a good start.
that's great. That's really fascinating. I enjoy that backstory. Thank you. When did you start getting into for lack of a better term, I'll call it the contact center, customer experience ecosystem and realm.
Well, I mean, contact center, as we know today, is very different than what people would call it in the past. In the past, it
Right.
was, like a call center, and nobody really had high expectations of call center support other than you hoped you got a live person to help you through issues, and that person was generally hobbled with, the inability to access relevant data to help solve the problem. So I would say really it's about probably 10 years ago. Um, I was running sales at a telecom company, and we had to go out and due diligence to select a new platform for the company itself. And so Adam Rennert, who was obviously part of the company, he and I worked together for a number of years at a few different companies. We seemed to kind of follow each other around. And I asked Adam to go out and run some diligence on vetting a few platforms that would meet our requirements. And that was really kind of the big exposure. Like I say, that was probably 10 years ago,
Yeah.
about that time. And what we found was, I guess, that there was a whole new world of technology out there. I mean, and to think about it 10 years ago to where it is today, it's totally different, but it was actually really cool technology back then because it was starting to get away from premise-based solutions and introducing other ecosystem technologies that would complement the core platform. And we looked at it and said, he came back, gave me a full readout of the various options, and then kind of sidebar later, we said, this is pretty cool stuff, right? To use a technical phrase. that we felt had some really big upside because companies have always struggled to find the best way to interact with their clients and or their partners or whatever it is. They always struggle to find the best way to do that, the most efficient way to do that, the seamless way to do that, that would kind of protect the history, that journey that they went through. And we said, this has got some big upside. And that's when, we left corporate world and started a little company.
That's really cool. That's awesome. I think that's great, and just the history from 10 years ago to today, it makes a lot of sense. And even for me, someone who's been at InflowCX for a little less than a year at this point, I can really start to see that now that you're talking about the story where we were versus for when you and Adam first started versus where we are today. It's great. And you said something there about you know businesses having a hard time or really trying to figure out how to connect with their partners, how to connect with their clients and things like that. It's one of the things I know that in consulting you've got to really have a great balance, right? How do you find is the most effective way to balance the customer, the tech partners, have a great relationship with all of them all the time, and you're in this really unique position. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say the important part is to make sure that all the stakeholders are at the table together. Even today, you find companies that try to solve for things in a vacuum, and so all the key people aren't represented because the
Hmm.
needs of an IT group, the needs of a business owner, a business operator, a business leader, the needs of a CFO, the needs of fill in the blank, right? All of them should have some influence on what the ultimate outcome looks like. But you found in the past that people try to solve for those things independently. They go meet with this group or meet with this group, meet with this group, and then, or they wouldn't even meet with all the groups, right? It was traditionally in IT, and that was, you know, that's an important part of it, but that should not be the group informing kind of what the go forward strategy or platform or technology should look like. Certainly need to be part of how to support that, deploy it, things like that. So I would say it starts with identifying the key stakeholders, and then the process needs to be very collaborative and transparent, right? So eliminate the fiefdoms that people try to create internally there, and just say, here's the outcome that we're working towards.
Right.
Here are all the people that need to be part of informing what that looks like, and then get them all together, and then collectively inform what it is that we're trying to accomplish, what it is that we want it to do, what's important, not important, what's important early, what's important later. And we found early on, and by virtue of really just being that was always, I think, certainly my philosophy in the past, is that the best thing you can do in any client engagement is have bigger ears than a mouth, and just listen more. And we did that, and that was the approach, and there were very few people out there doing that at the time. And so I think that really differentiated us at the time and enabled the business to kind of take off the way that it did, because it did grow rapidly in the first 7 years of the business, especially. So yeah, I would, to summarize all that, that was a mouthful, but summarize all that is make sure that it's a very collaborative and transparent process. That you listen and appropriately challenge when you should, because
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, we talk to clients all the time and we say, listen, you may go out and run diligence on something once every 3, 5, 7 years. We do that many in a week, right?
Right.
So
Yeah, that's
trust that
true.
we have some decent perspective and context for that process.
Right. Hey, look, we're the experts here, and it sounds a lot like, a big part of the role that we play, as a consultant is, look, we want to get everyone on the same page and get everyone out of these silos and working together once we identify that common goal and, kind of common go forward plan.
Well, and then it's important to kind of establish what success looks like as well, because too often people go in myopically with just solving for a problem, right? Well, that may solve for a problem, but there's so many other things you could get out of the technology. And so for us, it's important on what does success look like, on day one? What does it look like 6 months into it, 1 year into it, et cetera? And that's why, as you know, our model is not only do we support that early stage engagement on running the diligence and vetting the appropriate technology, but we assign customer success managers on an ongoing basis to keep our clients, on the leading edge of the new technologies that are being deployed or how people are consuming the technology in interesting and creative ways. And so we view it as really, a sustained engagement model, not just, all right, we helped with the selection, good luck.
Yeah.
There's value in that, but certainly not as much as there is on a sustained basis.
I totally agree with that. I think, it makes a lot of sense, right? You can help someone pick something, help them make sure that they're making the right decision initially, but as we know, with especially the way the technology is today, there's so much more you can do, and I appreciate the CSM team shout out there, near and dear to my heart, obviously. Thanks for that. So over the last, maybe 3 to 5 years, Ken, a lot has changed in, you know, contact center, but especially, when you start to talk about CX and some of the different things and capabilities that are coming to the table now. What do you think has changed the most, and not in terms of the actual technology, but the way customers think about some of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as much as anything. Well, I'd say a few things. One is customers want you to, and this may be overused, but meet them utilizing the technology or the method that works best for them. I mean, I'm a guy that doesn't necessarily want to talk to somebody, and so I love a lot of
Oh, well,
self-serve.
that's great. I'm glad we're on this then.
Yeah, I know, I know. I mean, listen, for you, I'll make the exception, but it really there needs to be some sensitivity of how clients want to interact with you, and for me, it's a lot of online self-serve chat. But if ultimately something fails, I need to be able to talk to somebody, and I want all that work and data capture that's existed at that point in time go to a live person, so I don't have to, spend 5 minutes or so re-explaining myself yet again. So
Right.
I think that's certainly a big part of it. And then the other part is probably that you just need to be sensitive to having access to good data. So it used to be the focus is purely on the end, the end client. In this case, I'll use that term. But listen, it's important to enable the agents themselves with good technology, because nobody wants to feel like they're hobbled in doing a good job. And so it's easy to think what the customer wants, and we should, but
Mhm.
it's equally as important to think what the agent wants or needs to be successful at their job. And so I think the technologies that are out there now are doing a much better job of addressing both of those things, bringing together a positive experience for the client on the other end and bringing together a positive experience for the agent. And then ultimately, all that data is collected and provided to the company so they can improve, right? They can identify the areas of improvement. So I think that's it, is you also focus on, both sides of that conversation, not just one.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I think that as an employee, if you feel like you're empowered to do your job, you have less of those moments of frustration, especially being a contact center agent, which is a tough gig, right? I think the more you feel good about what you're doing, and like you can do it effectively, the better care you'll take about the end customer. So they definitely both go hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants to do well at whatever they do, and we hear frequently, that how important it is to provide the right tools to do that, and so that's also the view we take going into this. It's again, like I mentioned earlier, you want all parties represented in that diligence process. Well, you also want all considerations on what's needed on the client side as well as kind of the agent side, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. We've got a great client of ours, a little over 5 years now, a BPO client, and their whole model is work from home agents, and
Oh wow.
tens of thousands of agents, and it's important in their retention of these employees to provide them the right tools so they feel like, all right, it's easy, it's accessible, it provides the right data, and because the worst thing that can happen is high churn, right? And contact center agents traditionally have experienced high churn, and so it's important for companies. I mean, you think about the cost involved with that type of turnover in your agent community. Anything you can do to reduce that has a huge positive upside, not only from how they feel about their job, but financially to the company as
Of
well.
course. Yeah, it's expensive. I mean, it's really expensive to continue to hire and train. And of course, you hear the horror stories about, man, we put these people through training, and then they quit and go find another job and go through that training and quit and go find another one. And yeah, if you can empower the employee to take care of themselves, make sure that they're able and to do their job and to do it effectively, it definitely goes a long way. Transitioning a little bit into, back into kind of the customer mindset, right? I'm an end customer, let's say, and I'm looking to do an evaluation of my current contact center and kind of customer experience strategy. You said earlier it's really important to focus on the solution and really what the business needs. What do you find is an impactful or the best way to kind of do that, to get everyone on the same page, right? Everyone has their own priorities and everyone has their list, and their things the most important and their things at the top. Can you give us a little bit of insight into how that conversation goes with with the customer? That's like, hey, look, there's a lot of things that need to get done, but let's focus. Some people are going to have to make some sacrifices.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think it starts with having a repeatable process. So for us, you can't approach everything in the method of, hey, let's just talk about it and figure things out along the way. So
Right.
we've built a very repeatable and now proven process that walks you through all the different steps of that journey, if you will, of selecting the right technology. And that's everything from informing current state to what the desired state's going to be, involving all those key stakeholders. We have a very structured scorecard that captures all the requirements across an abundant number of areas. We also, with that, capture, the vast majority of the use cases for that particular client. And so when we do bring technology providers to the table to demo capabilities, it's not, the high level, well, here's what we can do because everybody says they do everything. And the reality
Right.
of it is that, everybody does something a little bit differently, and some fit others better. And so, again, it's taking the time to capture current state, future desired state, specific use cases that are relevant to the client, right? So you look at that.
Yeah.
We also have a very robust financial modeling process that we walk our clients through as well, because ultimately, there's always that consideration of costs as well as that return on investment. So we have a total cost of ownership model that we work through with our clients, so we can ultimately, and we frequently will be the ones actually presenting to the CFO or CEO on the final output. And so I would say, the net of it is have a proven structured process that you stay with, so you're not relying on instinct and well, I kind of feel like that's right. You just want to eliminate the surprises downstream, and the best way to do that, in our experience, is to build that type of a process.
That's great advice. Keep it objective, right? Keep emotion out of it. Don't get, subjectivity and, oh, well, this is more important to me, but this is more important to, somebody else maybe. Um,
Well,
so I think that,
I mean, one example of that. Sorry to interrupt you, but we see that all the time. And with the scorecarding process, we give all the key stakeholders that scorecard, and we ask them to complete it independently, and then we will complete it independently. Then we get back together and we say, all right, let's expose everybody to our individual scorecards. And you'll have some people that'll say, "Oh, I really liked, this company A. I thought they were just great." And then you dig into the scorecard, and it's like, but they ranked the lowest, right, of the others.
right.
Well, but they were really dynamic in front of me. That's great. That's important, right? But ultimately, that is proven to be very valuable because it does remove. I mean, we're all emotional people anyway. I get it, but it does reduce the margin of error on a technology selection. And so we have, I mean, that scorecard's proven itself time and time again to like, and then ultimately people sit back and like, you know what? yeah, you're right. And then you've got, peers challenging each other, like, you remember that? And so again, it's a good process that works pretty well.
That's great. No, that's exactly where I was going with it, right? You've think about how many times you've been on a call or a demo of any sort, and oh, it's going really well. I feel really good about this. Only to after a decision's made, and you get into the weeds of it. You're like, ooh, this is actually not what I thought it was going to be, and the scorecard eliminates that that risk from happening, right? Because it's just subjective. Did it check this box? Yes or no? If no, great. It's great they made you feel good, but at the end of the day, how did it work for you?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the client makes the decision, right? I mean, kind of our mantra is we'll inform the decision, but you make the decision, and we will
Right.
play as involved a role as you want. And some clients at the end will, they'll say, "This is a toss up. What do you think?" And because of years of experience that we have in there, and knowing the kind of the intricacies that are all involved, then we'll weigh in. But we try to avoid that as much as possible because we want our client to really drive that process.
That's great. That's good. I mean, at the end of the day, you're right. It is their decision, but giving them the tools and the resources that they wouldn't have access to otherwise is, I mean, it's great and it's really powerful for them. I think that's
Yeah,
awesome.
if somebody's steering for towards a brick wall, we'll we'll help pump the brakes a little bit. But by and large, it really does manifest itself through the process of what the decision is going to be. It's rare that we get down to the end and it's like I'm not sure, right? Extremely
Right.
rare.
Awesome. Well, great. Ken, one last thing before we wrap up here. Get your crystal ball out, right? In the next in the next 3 to 5 years, um, take about 60 seconds and tell us what you think the most impactful change of contact center customer experience technology is going to be.
Yeah, well, let me caveat the answer with I'm the least technical person at the company. I've not made a living, being a real technical genius. I'm a decent operator and have a pretty good ability to build, top performing teams of people much smarter than me. So I'm going to answer this more as kind of what I see in the marketplace that's important
Sure.
to companies that are out there, and I probably wouldn't try and narrow in to a specific technology component of what's going to really be game changing in the next 3 to 5 years. I think I'll steer it more towards an area within this CX landscape, and that really is the self service and what AI will do to enable better self service. So it used to be a lot of the focus was on the core platform, the license, right, the seats, and now it's the periphery of that ecosystem that's really game changing. So everything on the analytics side, the workforce management side, to AI, to RPA as well. And I think really the growth in the next 3 years is how all of those surrounding technologies are going to accelerate the complement of the customer experience. Now, that last phrase was a little cliche, but it really is. I mean, the more data we can capture and make it relevant to a real-time interaction with the client that's calling in,
Hmm.
the better off these companies are. And we're seeing massive leaps and bounds in that peripheral tech right now. So I think it's all going to be around improving self-service and AI and how that relates to continued self-service and helping companies more effectively manage that customer journey on a go-forward basis. So we're pretty excited about that. I mean, Austin, you may know or may not know, we spend a lot of time vetting new entrants into this space, a lot of time, right? And
Yes, we
because of
do.
our
We definitely do.
reputation and because of our reputation in the marketplace, a lot of these new launching companies will come to us and say, "We think we have a good product. Here's what it does. Here's what it looks like," and we'll say, "Great, we'll stress test that." And so we'll get under the hood and really dig into that. And so I think that helps us stay current, but also helps us to be part of identifying kind of future state in this CX ecosystem that we have. But reverting back and answering your question in simple terms, I think it's going to be continued development on the technologies that surround the core CX ecosystem, with being heavily weighted on that on the self-service side for sure.
Wow, that's great. And really, really insightful. And I could definitely see the market going that way too. There's some really cool stuff out there already, and you think about how fast the world develops in general, right? The next 3 to 5 years will just be really fun to be a part of, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And thank you, Ken, for being part of our Inflow Experience podcast today. It's been a great, great conversation.
Well, thank you, Austin. I'm pleased that you're part of the company and the team today. It's been a lot of growth over the last year, right? We if you look at the company today, we're 3 companies that have come together all in the last year, and I would like to think that every acquisition along the way has complemented what I just described as kind of a future state of enablement. We get better at these areas, better at those areas, and that way ultimately it complements what we do for our clients. So, there's a lot of change. So if you love change, you're at the right company and the right industry. And I know you do. You and I have had the opportunity to speak, on a more personal level, most recently in Arizona last week. So thanks for your time. I appreciate all the work you're doing with that client team that you're working with.
Absolutely, absolutely, Ken. Well, hey, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. We'll go ahead and wrap up this episode now. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers. Have a great day.
Cheers.
All right.
You too.